Hi, Shannon. Hey, do you have a minute?
Yeah, come on in.
I've been wondering, are there any questions that in this whole week that we've talked about all kinds of stuff that you still are wondering? Because you're getting ready to go back to college now.
Yeah, actually, a couple of my college friends have asked why you and Grandma went so far away to spread the gospel. What do you suggest I say to them?
That's a good question. Actually, Sally and I thought a lot about it when we first went to Papua New Guinea. Why did God send us to such an out-of-the-way, small kind of a place? But you know, after being there a long time and being in other parts of the world, we've come to see things really quite differently.
What changed?
Well, now we realize that God was there all along, and He prepared us and brought us into the situation.
And what situation was that?
Is there anyone in the world who doesn't matter to God? In the 1950s, people of Wagu village, a tiny hamlet in the Sepik Province of Papua New Guinea, were hiding away in the forest. They had seen so many deaths that they thought they had enemies everywhere. Some of them supernatural, some people. They thought at first that doing the rituals would help, and they tried those and didn't seem to work. So then they said, it must be witchcraft of some sort. Is it one of our women? If so, we'll kill her. They finally decided it was the women of Yesin village. So they prepared for war. They got their equipment ready, their stone axes and stone tools, and they went and attacked the Yesin village. They left a couple of men behind. One was mentally challenged, another was very young, and they left women behind. But you know, the Yesin people had steel tools, and they didn't know that. And the Yesins killed all of the Wagu men. So everybody fled, except one.
This young man was called Yafe, and he went to friendly villages and other language groups and told them, help me keep the Wagu land. Join us in building a new village on the lake. There we can get the benefits from the government officers too. Now several Bahinemo speakers joined Yafe in this new village, marrying his widowed cousins. A Kakaru-speaking family brought 6 hardy boys and girls to live there. Napa Magai and 5 other men had gone out to a plantation, and they chose this village as well. Yet, in 1963, by then every baby in Wagu had died, and many adults had also died. The men started searching again for the hidden enemy. 36 Nikilu speakers joined the Wagus. All their parents and children had died as well. A vivid dream had given Napa hope. I saw a light-skinned man come to Wagu with a book that will give answers to our problems. But his buddies scoffed. What foreigner would want to come to this dying village? About that time, back in Michigan, I was wrestling with my own future. I watched some missionary pictures that my Aunt Grace was showing, and they ended with the song, I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord. And I heard God say to me, that's you, and go. My first step was to go to the University of Michigan. I had never heard of missions until I was 13, when a missionary came to our church and showed pictures of her medical work. The last picture was of a mountain. She said, behind that mountain are people who have never heard of Christ. Someone needs to go there. And in my mind, I clearly heard a voice say to me, Sally, I want you to go there. I did not know which mountain or where, but I developed a strong impression that I was to get nurses training at the University of Michigan. I attended the University Christian Fellowship meeting that first week. They asked me to share my testimony. I saw Sally there, and I went home and told my mother, I think I've met the girl I'm going to marry. But it took him almost a year to convince me. After our marriage and 3 children, we had many hurdles, including Wayne's near-fatal accident, more graduate studies, and a lack of prayer partners and support. After completing our training, Wycliffe Bible translators gave us a choice of over 2,000 languages. We chose Papua New Guinea. That was still 800 languages. Well, we finally narrowed it down to one language,
but it was 3 days by canoe from the nearest airstrip, Ambunti. The wiser older people in our missions said to me, "You can't really go that far away. We're not with 3 little children." So we found a place that was only a couple hours away from the airstrip. When I went to Wagu village, I told them what I was going to do. I was going to translate God's book into that language. They said, "Yes, we speak that language. Please come here."
The Wagus were eager to help us. They built us a livable house in just 3 weeks. And we appreciated their efforts, but the daily living challenges overwhelmed me. We still had no refrigeration, limited water supply, few amenities. We did have a great supply of heat, humidity, mosquitoes, and cockroaches. A few weeks after we arrived, someone reported, "Yamu's baby is dead. We just buried her." The only baby in Wagu was gone. She had not appeared sick just hours earlier. What is going on here? That was too sudden. Are my own children safe here?
I became ill myself a few weeks after that, and villagers came to me and said, "Oh, we're sorry that you joined our clan because someone in our clan is going to die. And we've seen a ghost who told us that, and now you're going to be it." But then we decided that was time to get out of there.
When we returned the following year, Yamu had another baby, Gunmaha. Then one night, the women invited me to the birth hut. Baby Yamsu was born with a cord around his neck and could not breathe. I gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. After that, the women began to have more confidence in my medical skills. The Ambunti medical officer knew malaria was the main cause and gave me the medications and tablets and injections. However, trying to teach Bahinemos about malaria challenged all my cross-cultural training. We even had a biologist bring a microscope to show them the parasites. I taught them to hand sew mosquito nets to protect themselves and their children. These ideas conflicted with all they had been taught from infancy. Just before we were to leave for several months, the women urged me to join them to walk up to the top of the mountain, and they showed me infant-shaped stone with arm-like projections. Terrified of it. That stone is the head-killing spirit causing the deaths in our village. Will you take it away to America? After praying for wisdom, I felt God would protect me, and I carried it down the mountain.
When the men saw it, they rushed over to our house, gathered all the village together, and harangued the women that this was going to be a terrible thing. We were going to be driven out of the village by that spirit, and they were very unhappy. So I told them, I will pray and ask for God's protection on the village and on us. Then we left soon after that, and while we were away, the Wagu men once again made another raid, this time after the Bakabaki people, whom they thought had done black magic against one of their people again. This time, the government caught them, put them all in prison, and the vulnerable Gahom women that joined with them, the men that joined with them, they came and stayed in our village. That made the village a lot bigger, and also gave Sally more work and medical work.
A month or so later, a little boy named Bossai went into convulsions. Now his father was ready to take him away from me and carry him off to be buried because they believed he was already dead. And he said, our killing spirits are a lot stronger than your medicine or your God. Well, fortunately, Napa was there, and he tried to calm him and distract him while I got the malaria injection, and this brought Bossai back to consciousness after a few hours. And then the father said it couldn't have been a killing spirit because Bossai did not die. I realized that only God could change their thinking, but I would do my best to get them the help they needed so eventually they could trust God and teach others. These signs of God's power gradually convinced most Wagus that his book might have the answers they needed.
All this time, they were wondering when Napa's dream was going to be fulfilled, and they would find out what was in that book. And I didn't understand the significance of the dream even when I heard about it. But we were a disappointment to them because it was taking us a lot longer to learn the language and translate it than they had hoped.
We had translated very little scripture into Bahinemo, and the stress was getting to us both. My life felt full of miscommunication and personal failure. And one day they brought a baby that had just died. And when I failed to resuscitate it, I really was discouraged, and I cried all night that night. And the next day I told Napa, I'm just not adequate for this job. I want to go home. He said, don't leave yet. Wayne is almost at the point where he's learned the language well enough to translate the book. And Napa called the whole village together that night and led them in prayer, asking God to give me the courage to stay on. The first time any Bahinemo speaker had ever prayed, they prayed for us. And seeing how God helped me in my weakness taught them that God helps the weak. They had assumed all white people were strong.
At that time, I was starting to translate, working with people. I had tried translating Mark 7 about the sins that Jesus told about, and Bagai had responded, you know, our ancestors told us those things too, but we're people of the ground, we don't do them. And that had been my first opportunity to explain to them exactly, none of us do those things, we all fail, and that's why God sent His Son to die for us. And they were just beginning to glimpse the truth during that period.
And Bagai helped translate the short and clear presentations of the Gospel Recordings International. And when the records came back, he called the people together to listen. He finally understood salvation. He and Napa explained it to the others. Yafe listened eagerly. When he decided to follow Christ, the spirit forces he had gone to for power in the past spoke to him. If you follow Jesus, we will have to leave. Go, then, he said. Bagai, Napa, and Yafe started a church in Wagu using passages we had translated. Before we left for a year of furlough in 1968, 50 people were baptized after answering questions individually about their faith. We saw increasing confidence and joy in their lives. Most outstanding was the power to love their spouses and their children and their neighbors.
Those were good times for us because we saw the village growing in faith. They were starting to reach out to other people. There was change. There was listening to the truth and finding out about it. Those were all really good things, and we began to see a genuine indigenous church there. We about that time went off to Fuller Seminary. The Wycliffe had work for us to do. And then soon after that, New Tribes Mission came into the far end of the language group and started translation. And that was the time that we were then able to move on to other kinds of work.
Then came an opportunity for a grant to record an endangered language. We returned to Wagu in 2007 and 2008 after 18 years away, expecting the worst.
When we got back, the villagers gave us an amazing welcome. They had speeches and various things to let us know that they really wanted us back, and they told us that it was the gospel that had changed them. They had had development projects that we had helped them with and all kinds of other things. But at each point, they pointed out how the gospel had changed their lives on the inside and made them able to take on a new way of life. And sure enough, Sally counted the people in the village, found that there were an average of 4 children per household. The village had grown, they were healthier, they were proud of themselves, they were happy. It was an amazing change, and we wondered just what had been going on through all that period.
It was a few months later when they invited us to a crusade. This is an exciting 3-day revival meeting where Christians from several languages gathered together annually. They praised God and shared the good news. Each language group had New Testaments translated by our co-workers in the Sepik. This renewal movement is sweeping the Middle Sepik. Inaru village is also revived. In October of 2012, Jason and Tony Stewart from New Tribes Mission dedicated the New Testament and some Old Testament passages I attended in both Inaru village and Wagu. We expect more lives changed by God's word in their languages.
Does God care about the hidden peoples of the world? Now you know what we think. Now you know what we saw. But there are many peoples like the Wagus that are still away in all out-of-the-way corners of the world. They need to hear, they need to have the Bible in their language as well. There's plenty of work left to be done. Right now, Sally and I have the privilege of teaching people who are called to this kind of work. And it's a thrill to see them going out and see God raising people up, but there's a need for more. There's also a need for more backers for those people. Some of my recent students are still waiting to go because they don't have enough funds, they don't have enough people praying for them. There is a huge need.
Are you ready to offer to pray, give, or go wherever God leads?